Getting your results and finding out that you have failed may be extreme. While friends move on to the next grade, you feel like you're left behind trying to pick up the pieces and you're not sure what to do. Repeating a grade can also feel like a slap on the face, but it's really not the end of the world. Let's find out what you can do with educational psychologist Dr. Ken Resnick. Good morning, Dr. Ken, and thank you for joining me.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Right. During this time of the year, parents and children are receiving results, unless those who are in matric. And it can be a stressful time for students as they're unsure whether they have passed or not. And also for those who do receive their results already and see that they have failed, it is a difficult time for them and their parents. So, what can parents do when their child fails a grade?
All right. I take it you're talking about high school kids,
Yes.
because little ones also fail. So, look, I think what we need to understand, the warning signs are there during the year.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the kids have got a good indication as the year goes on that they're in danger of failing. It's very rare if a kid's doing okay during the year that they're going to fail that kid. So the problem is what was done during the year to rectify the problem. And kids that fail, don't do well at school, there are a whole lot of factors that are problems, especially teenagers. Teenage world is not easy today. So you might have some that are not interested in learning, or they're not disciplined enough to learn on their own. They might be clashing with their parents, where the parents are nagging them. They go to their room, but they're not learning. If a child enjoys the subject or enjoys learning, they should do well. Most kids, the average child, if they enjoy learning, they enjoy school, should pass. But there are normally other issues. Lack of self-discipline. In this day and age, far too much time spent on social media, spent on these devices that they're addicted to, and learning is last in the order of priority. The other factors as well, their study techniques are often very poor. And the schools are not, and I'm generalizing, they do not, from my experience, show these kids how to plan their studies so it's not so stressful. They don't show them how to study. For instance, you've got to be able to read at a good speed in order to cope with a lot of the work, if it's study material, etc. And kids are not given those tools. But as sure as nuts, the stress during the year becomes part of the problem. The child would definitely have been called in. The parents would have been possibly called in. Parents could have been nagging them on their case. Ultimately, there could have been a bit of chaos, but failing is actually a choice, if you think about it. Kids are choosing not to work hard enough, or not to understand the work, or not to ask questions, etc. And so we've got to look at the bigger problem, because since COVID, especially during that break, a lot of kids, there was no discipline at home. It created huge stress in the home, on marriages, where the kids, a lot of them would have spent lots and lots of time on devices and social media just to keep out of the parents' hair. And if they didn't have the self-discipline to study, that is a problem. So self-discipline is the key for a kid to do well. And unfortunately, the way we bring up kids, that because they're so dependent on somebody wanting somebody to help them all the time, whether it's extra lessons or whatever, many of them lack self-discipline. So there's a lot of factors, warning signs that you can pick up during the year. We're speaking now at the end of the year. It's too late, and it's a horrible feeling. I actually failed Stan and I, funny enough, and I wasn't a happy teenager. And in those days, they didn't care. I think I failed my languages by 1%, and they kept me back. And it was devastating at the time, but interesting enough, the next year, my classmates were different, and I got over it. But it was a horrible feeling. But in this day and age, there's too many kids underachieving, far too many, and nobody's noticing it. So as a result, they either in high school kids in extra lessons. Some of them might be going for counseling. The parents are taking big strain with too many kids. And then we just hope and pray that they'll pass at the end of the year. And just scraping through is a problem. And then how many of these kids know what they want to do when they leave school? They might have chosen the wrong subjects. They might find they've been told, take maths and science, because what can you do without it? and they might just not have the aptitude. So they need to relook at this stage. Have they chosen the right subjects if they're in grade 10 or going to grade 11? Uh, and that goes for grade 9 as well. So a lot can be done. But teenagers are difficult to counsel. They don't normally enjoy counseling. But when I look at a teenager, I've got a brilliant profile that gives me a cross section of that child in terms of how they feel about themselves, their self motivation, their attitude towards people, how well socialized, a whole lot of factors that are creating a problem for them in terms of how they're taking on life. And I find when I can connect with a child in that way, they tend to open up. And inevitably, there's some problem with the parents as well. Either the parents are pushing them too much, giving them too many lectures, they're spending too much time in their room, they don't communicate with their parents. There are a whole lot of factors. And I know we're talking about kids that fail. I'm talking about all the danger signs, which we need to pick up at the beginning of the year, not wait until they finish the exam, they're going to fail. And that's what we've got to see these telltale signs, help parents and help the child discipline themselves, and with the agreement of the child, parents set down boundaries regarding how much time these children can spend on devices, in terms of where their priorities are. A lot of kids, their friends are all on the internet. The device, they have friends they don't ever meet. So there's just a whole lot of little things that have crept in with children. And unfortunately, the pool of underachievers is getting bigger. And nobody's asking the question why. And we're ending up with a lot of issues for parents and the kids themselves. They want to just give up. They believe they're stupid or they can't, or they maybe even want to go to another school. There are a whole lot of things. Whereas at the beginning of the year, we should really, from grade 8, we should start looking and finding signs of kids that are not coping, and then help the child and the parent so that we can get these kids into some type of routine and give them enough responsibility so that we don't have to be nagging them to go and work. Because remember, primary school, they got homework books where parents should check every day so they can keep tabs on their work. At high school, they don't have homework books, which means often parents, the first time they hear something not okay is on a parents' evening, and there are not many of them during the year. So there are all of these things that parents can actually be given some idea of what they have to do, but they have to have the kids respect where their kid will work with them. And then we've got to try and help. We need to speak to the kid. Why do they think they didn't do well? It's all very well saying, well, I'll do better next time. What's going to be the difference between next time and this time? It's purely their attitude and their inability or belief in that they can do it with a lot of these children. So I hope that
All
makes
right,
sense.
Dr. Resnick, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, I'd like to find out what parents can do to get involved into their child's learning and studying. And also, could it be generational? Is this something that could be passed down from the parent to child, etc.? Hold that thought, and we'll continue when we come back.
In a centralized world. where institutions held the all-important data and confirmed all transactions. Those times are over. Welcome to Libertas Group, a blockchain development company boasting an ecosystem that continually redefines the way we do business. Our blockchain is decentralized, making it immune to hacking or alteration, putting the power back in your hands with no middleman so you can focus on the growth of your business. Libertas, the simplest investment choice we make.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Your act of love gives hope. Islamic Relief supports orphans and vulnerable children in 28 countries with food, education, and medical care. There are more than 150 million orphans in the world. You can give hope to one. Sponsor an orphan today. Go to www.islamic-relief.org.za.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media, your humanitarian broadcaster.
Welcome back. It's 23 minutes past 11, and you are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media. We are talking about what parents can do when their children fail, especially their teenage children, and intervening at the end of the year. That's a bit too late now. It's late. It's already late. If your child has failed, they have failed. It is time for the way forward now. And joining me is educational psychologist Dr. Ken Resnick. And before the break, Dr. Resnick spoke about lack of self-discipline being the key to children failing. Dr. Resnick, thank you for staying on the line. And before the break, I asked how can parents get more involved? And obviously now is not the time to get involved. They have to do it from the get-go, from the beginning of the year, or from when they see that the child needs an intervention. And also, can it be generational? Is this something that can be passed down from a parent to child?
Yeah, it's a good sort of question. No, it's definitely not generational. What we got to understand is every healthy human child is born with passion. They can't wait to get into the world. They crawl, they ask questions, they've got a sense of curiosity, but it's totally up to the adult to guide them into life and equip them with skills. So what we're tending to do these days is we're tending to mollycoddle the kids. We're doing too much for them. So what is happening that the child themselves need help all the time. They're scared to try things on their own. And as a result, we're encouraging a form of helplessness where a child will come home, not listen in class, come home and know that somebody's going to help them. So why should they listen in class? So parents are not being given any real constructive advice regarding how do we get children to do it and enjoy school. A child that enjoys school will do well. And I'm talking about the learning part. And that has to be instilled from an early age where kids they must enjoy reading. They should enjoy maths in grade 1 and 2. I mean, every kid can read and every kid can do maths. That is all the parents' job, to help encourage a child. Once they're teenagers, it's a bit late. In other words, there the child has to be prepared to want to go and try the extra lessons for themselves. And you must remember, I remember with my stepkids, we never expected a mark. When they got their marks, we always said to them, were you happy with the mark? They'd either say yes, or we could have done better. So we've got to actually ask kids, are they happy with the mark? And if they're not, why? What's going on? And then we've got to set boundaries. So the whole thing really is about how we helping kids become independent, self-motivated children that want to learn, want to do math, because we're born to learn. We're born with a brain. That brain has sent man to the moon and beyond. That brain from any ordinary person. So we've got to create something at home so that the child's passion is maintained. So the more we do for our kids, the more we run around them, The less they do for themselves, the less interest they have in schoolwork. And then, of course, the kids are called in. They're being over-assessed as far as I'm concerned. Too many are being diagnosed with all sorts of problems. And then what happens? You get a very anxious parent. And once the parents become anxious, especially when their child's been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, well, we've got a big problem at home. So parents need to understand their job. It's too late by the time they're teenagers. If we've helped kids right through their schooling, where they haven't got this will to want to learn, they haven't done that well at school. And now they're going into high school. It's not all of a sudden going to happen. So we do really have to understand what our job is at a younger age. And the way we're going about it these days is hugely problematic. But there's no question, certainly the kids born since 2005, too many of them got attitude. Too many of them lack the grit to sit and discipline themselves. And that has to come from parenting, where you don't just give a child something, they get bored, and we get them something else. And off they go. They get bored, and then you put them in front of a TV or PlayStation. So we've got to, parents need to just understand their job, because parenting is a job. But if we start losing children as teenagers, we've got to know how to get them back. And that's where, that is maybe, I suppose, where I come in to try and connect them. Because kids can't see the consequences of poor school marks in terms of how many doors are going to be closed when they go into life. So it's a far bigger problem, and we're not educating parents enough to help them feel better, because it's hugely stressful, and we're not knowing how to turn kids around, to have a different attitude, to play less on the PlayStation, to have other interests, get involved more with sport, competitive stuff, etc. So there's a balance to their lives. So there are quite a lot of factors in this, and we do need to go on some type of educational drive to either educate parents and then get teenagers to certainly work with an adult where they actually want to learn and want to achieve.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now, going forward, what advice can you give to parents whose child has already failed and they're unsure what to do next?
Well, obviously, it depends what grade. But I think if they failed, they need to repeat the year. But you'll find statistics show children that fail don't do much better the next year. Mm-hmm. They don't all of a sudden get big more. Why? And that's the problem with failing kids, because the problem is not because they're stupid. And we've got to try and look at why did they fail? What went wrong? They might scrape through the next year. So at the end of the day, we need to look at the bigger problem. And I do think we need to have some type of drive or educational drive to help enlighten parents with the child's cooperation, obviously, especially when they reach adolescence, on how to turn them around so that they can start believing in themselves. You'll get a lot of kids before they've opened a maths book, they'll say to Dad, help me with my maths. They haven't even opened their book. So they're opting out before they've even tried, if it's something they don't think they can do. And then they're not listening in class. And then they want their parents to teach it, or an extra lesson teacher. So we're not confronting why are kids choosing not to learn, choosing not to read, as I said earlier on. Those are choices, which we have to instill early on. And if they don't want to read, there's lots of ways that we don't have time here to help parents encourage children to read or to stick with maths. Maths is a building block subject. If you practice it enough, you can do it. A child that can add up 1 and 1 can add up 6 and 4 with effort. It just takes practice and not just giving up. So that giving up, when the going gets tough, becomes quite a big problem. So parents need to go out for help, but with the cooperation. When I see teenagers, I always ask them, but I need to see your parents as well. I encourage them, I don't go behind their back, but I encourage them to help the parents parent the teenager at school. That's going to help them work better. And there's no question, if the vibe in the home changes, often the child all of a sudden starts improving. And they start, they start cooperating and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And they start loving what they're doing, and they start enjoying to learn and going to school, etc. And they want to improve for themselves, and it's not for their parents, it's for themselves. Dr. Resnick, that's all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful festive season.
You too. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Educational psychologist Dr. Ken Resnick talking and giving advice of what parents can do when their child has failed a grade, and by now it is already too late for an intervention. You need to start intervening in your child's schooling career from the onset. The moment they start going to school, the moment they start showing interest in learning, reading, writing, that's when you have to guide them and play an important role. Just because they are teenagers and are now in high school, that does not mean that you should leave them to do things on their own. Now it gives them the freedom to be able, and gives them discipline. You have to instill the discipline and ensure that they want to learn, that they want to go to school, they want to be independent and not depend on somebody to always be teaching them, etc. And we've seen how the pandemic has contributed to poor studying, codependence, lack of self-motivation, etc. So there's lots to be done with parents, and hopefully next year there will be change, but the change starts now. The change starts today. It is 32. Please stay with us. We will be right back after the break.